So the last thing I want to show you how to do with collections is something that is really useful in order to be able to use collections together, and it is to combine collections with a map. And you can combine collections with other types, but typically a map is going to be the most useful, and it really solves a lot of problems that are pretty difficult to solve in other ways. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create an example here of creating test scores. So I'm going to create a map here, and I'm going to make it a map of string, and we're going to have this map a student name, which will be a string, to a list of their test scores. So we're going to use another collection here, and it's going to be a list of integer. So this syntax is a little bit strange here, but if you remember, a map has a key and a value. And in this case, the key is a string, which will represent the name of the student, and the value is actually another collection, which is a list of test scores, or a list of integers. So we can call this test scores, this map, and we'll create a new hash map, and the same thing here. We'll do string, and we'll do a list of integer. So now we have our map of test scores, and we need to populate this data. So the way we do this is we can just do test scores dot put. Remember, you put things into a map, and we'll put a name, we'll put Joe, and then now we need a list of test scores here. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to create a new list, and I'm just going to create a list of type integer, and we'll call this Joe's scores equals new array list of type integer. Then I'm going to add some scores. We're going to say Joe's scores dot add. We'll put in 80, and then we'll put in a few more scores here. We'll put 60, we'll put 97, and then we're just going to put Joe's scores into here. And so you can see here that we have created our array list, we've added a bunch of items to it, and then we've inserted it into the map. So now we have a map that's mapping a student or a string to a list of integers. So I went ahead and added some more scores here. I added an Amy scores and Fred scores, and we've added them to our test score under Joe, Amy, and Fred. So now we have basically a map that's got 3 keys or 3 entries in here that each have an array list of their test scores. So let's create a method to be able to print out the test scores of a student. So to save us a little bit of time here, I went ahead and created this print scores method. And all this print scores method is going to do is it takes in a string for the student name and then our map of our test scores. So we've called it scores map here, and it's the same thing. It's just a map of type string of a list of integers. And so then what it's going to do is it's going to get the correct list of integers based on the student name out of our map. It's going to store it in this variable called scores, and this is a list of integer. Remember that our map contains lists of integers, and the keys are the student name. So that's just going to use that to pull out the correct list from our map. And then we're just going to loop through each score in the scores. So we're using our iterator here to iterate through this list. And then we're just going to print out each score. And I'll uncomment out this line. Here we're printing the scores for Fred, and we're passing in our test scores. So if I run this, you can see it's printed out 50 and 60. If I change this to Amy, you can see that it's printed out 80, 60, 97. And if I change this to Joe, you see it's printed out his test scores, which are 80, 60, 97. So let's try Amy's. There's a bug here in Amy's. We need to actually print Amy scores. In the data setup, it was wrong here. So now you can see if we run Amy's, it's printing the correct values for Amy. But basically, the idea here is that you can create a map of another collection, and you can really do this to create some very complex types. As you can see here, it'd be kind of difficult without this kind of a data structure to model the scores for an individual student. We'd have to come up with some clever way of using different collections and knowing which number represented which one in a different collection, in order to store all these scores, or we'd have to create our own custom classes that had a list of the scores for each student. But this is a real easy way to be able to do that, and then you're able to really create a more complicated data structure from these simpler ones.